Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Stop it now, I'm leaving.
I don't think
Hello and welcome back. We are breaking up with RBS and we are on episode number 79. I am Tawny Santabria.
And I am JDK Winnikin. Back again to debunk the junk for the 79th time.
Yes.
We just keep on coming.
Yes. Well, we know this.
We do.
Yes. We'll never stop.
We'll never stop.
Mm-hmm.
You hear that, everybody? We will never stop. So, we're now on record, Tawny.
Well, unless we're forced to.
Right.
That could happen.
That could happen.
Yeah.
Right. As much as it depends on us, we will never
Yes.
stop anyway.
Yes.
So, how are you? You're welcome back to the studio, Tawny.
Thank you.
How's hubby Dave?
Hubby Dave is recovering quite nicely.
Oh, good.
Moving around quite a bit, taking himself to breakfast, that kind of thing.
That's good. That's good. You were pretty much done. You go take yourself to breakfast.
Yes, no more making you breakfast. You are on your own. No, not really. But he doesn't want to be cooped up in the house.
Oh, sure.
He likes to get out a little bit here and a little bit there.
Sure.
So he's doing good in his recovery.
Well, that's good.
Mhm.
That's good. Well, hubby Dave, glad you're doing better, my friend. That's
Yes.
awesome. So welcome back.
Thank you.
And you picked a
Great
great
be
day
here.
to be.
I
to be
sure
back in.
did.
Holy moly!
I sure did. The sun is shining upon me in here.
It's amazing, right? So to all of you out there, hopefully the sunshine, literally or figuratively, is shining down upon you
Mhm.
wherever you are.
Mhm.
You're listening live. Thank you so much for doing so. If you are listening to us as a podcast, and you can get this wherever you get your podcasts, thank you so much for subscribing, for leaving us a review. We really appreciate it, and thank you in advance for sharing it with the people that you know would be interested. You can also, if you want more Breaking Up with BS, we've got a YouTube channel with all of the episodes of the show on it, so you can see us do this. We also have a Facebook group of the same name that you can join and get content in between. Tawny has a 6-week self-mastery course at unperfectyourself.com that takes all of these concepts and you can apply them in your own context. And on the second Saturday of every month, Tawny and I run a free Zoom workshop, introducing anybody who wants to come in to these practices, and you can ask any questions, and we'll answer them to the best of our ability. So that's every second Saturday of the month, 9 a.m. Pacific time, and it's great. So boy, we're all over the place these days.
We are. That was a mouthful.
It was.
Yes.
It was. And I did it without note cards.
You did it without note cards and without breathing.
Means
Maybe you did breathe.
Means
a
I'm
little
full
bit.
of air.
Yes, yes. No, you did breathe a little bit. Of course, yes.
There's that is that is something that I have been accused of before, having a lot of air.
Okay. Well,
anyways,
that's a story.
It is a story.
Possibly.
It is
or
a
not.
story, but it might be one I embrace. I'm okay with that. But
Yeah.
what I am excited about is that spring is here,
Spring is here. That's
officially,
so nice.
which for me
Yes.
means baseball season.
Of course, and you have your Bad News Bears jersey on.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I got it specifically for the beginning of baseball season because
Oh, you did.
hope springs eternal to be baseball season, right? When it's starting out, everybody thinks their team's going to be great.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And the Bad News Bears is one of my favorite baseball movies. So
Yes.
I have my own. And it's got my number as my birth year,
Oh, nice.
73.
Uh-huh.
So anyway,
Yes. So this is the beginnings of our baseball podcasts also. Is that correct?
that would be quite
This
the crossover.
is where we start to bring in the baseball stories.
Well, baseball stories are always applicable.
Of
You just
course.
always.
Yes, they are. To
Always.
just about any life situation at all.
And if they aren't, I will do my best.
Yes,
to make
you
them
can
not.
fit it in. So we'll have to make sure, maybe a baseball story fits in
Oh yeah.
here or there to sort of describe
Well,
the situation a little bit more clearly.
let's just see how that comes out.
Yeah, who
organically,
knows? Yeah. hmm
For lack of a better word. All right. So,
So besides baseball, what are we talking about today?
well, I don't know. I think, some ideas. One of the interesting things for me with now doing coaching
Mm-hmm.
is seeing what common things are kind of coming up,
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's one that we've talked about before that does come up, and you hear it a lot these days. Imposter syndrome.
You do hear that a lot these days and for a while.
That part was new to me. To me,
Oh.
the imposter syndrome is kind of a newer thing, meaning the last
Oh.
handful of years. But what you just said seems to imply it goes back further than that.
Well, it does go back further than that.
So you're not just implying it, you're stating it
No.
directly.
But certainly, like a lot of different words or labels or descriptors, they have their season, right? Or where they're more robust, right? Like we're all getting on the bandwagon of this particular thing. So we may be using it more often here or hearing about it more often, but it really sort of dates back to some studies in the 70s.
Wow, that
Yeah.
far back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, what do you think? What comes up for you with that? Because this is the Flinging Your Poo series.
Gosh, yes.
And wow, there can be a lot of poo that we fling around,
Mm-hmm.
metaphorically, of course,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
around something like this, not feeling good enough or being an imposter in a situation. So what comes up for you? Where do you want to start with that?
Yeah, it's sort of like that. We've also learned that fake it till you make it kind of thing. I
Right.
think that goes along with this
Yep.
too. But certainly, I just love, I have to say first, I just love that we tend to, just normal phases of our lives, we tend to make a syndrome out of it. We tend to make a delay out of it, a disorder out of it. We tend to, if it's a difficulty, we tend to make it a big problem, as opposed to maybe just being in a learning curve, right? Or because certainly with imposter syndrome, we have this expectation about ourselves that we're supposed to be something other than maybe what we're actually relating to in ourselves, right? So then, we look at those BS stories. What are we telling ourselves about who we are in this particular context that then is bringing up sort of the terms
Yeah.
for ourselves? And then we're using it over and over again. It gets into our subconscious and our brain starts to believe ourselves, right? So it's this strange thing.
Yeah.
Anyways, but certainly, I've heard folks use it like who maybe are early in their careers. They're early in their careers and here they are starting to, maybe for yourself as a new coach.
Yeah.
I don't know, right? Like when I was a counselor many decades ago, starting out and there's this expectation of sort of being this expert.
Right. There can be.
Yep.
Mhm.
And so if we put that on ourselves
Mhm.
or if we're being fed that from our communities or our groups of, the people that we interact with, then we're going to move into our own learning process, our own growing process in our own development in a way that says, oh no, I'm supposed to be the expert in this. They're going to find out I'm a fraud. And how do I sort of like crunch all of this together
Yeah.
so they don't catch on,
Keep up appearances.
right? That I
Yeah.
don't know what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we're using this term imposter syndrome around that self-doubt, and it really is about, well, we've got a lot of learning and growing to do throughout our whole lives.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop.
Yeah. And calling it a syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
it's pathologizing something that's normal.
But you have to start somewhere.
Yeah. You're going to have a learning curve.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's a syndrome.
Exactly.
Because it's something like a syndrome says to me, you have it. You're afflicted.
Well, and it's a problem.
Right.
Like, how are you supposed to be anywhere other than where you are?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So certainly we can talk about this in terms of like the BS stories,
Yeah.
right? The BS stories that we carry can keep us in a deficit with ourselves. We can reinforce over and over and over again that we're not good enough. And we can reinforce the self-doubt. We've talked about this around the BS stories. But oftentimes it's this imposter syndrome also is sort of like around new beginnings,
Yes.
right? Like, okay, I'm entering into this new part of my life or world,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm supposed to fake it till I make it,
Right.
right? Like that almost in a strange way, depending on how we sort of internalize that, makes this imposter syndrome, like it reinforces it. Like
It
it's saying
does.
like, yes, this is a real thing for you.
Mm-hmm. Right. It does. And yeah, and what I find interesting too, at least in some cases with clients, is if you ask questions about, well, what's the standard? almost inevitably, there's some element of they're comparing how they feel on the inside, projecting it to how other people are appearing on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
A standard that can't necessarily be really defined. When would you stop becoming an imposter? Is a question I'll ask. When would you stop? How would you know?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And then there's not really that can be a struggle, for an answer on that, because I don't think there necessarily is. I mean, because the shorthand would be, well, I don't feel like an imposter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but what's the evidence going to be? And in the end, that evidence is going to be interpreted by each of us.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be deciding whether or not we're an imposter anymore or not at some point.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. And if we reinforce those stories over and over and over, it doesn't matter how or where we get to, those stories are still going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how much experience we've had. Somebody looks at us in a way that makes us uncomfortable. Like, does that person really know what they're talking about? We're an imposter, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And they are keying in on how we're fraudulent, right? Like that's part of the trouble is if we reinforce it for ourselves instead of seeing it as I'm still a learner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm growing.
Yeah.
I've got lots to learn. I don't need to know everything. I'm not perfect. And the more I stay open, actually, the more I'm going to learn.
Yeah.
Right? Like if those are the kinds of things we're telling ourselves, we're of course not going to be an imposter.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That imposter syndrome is based off of like you were talking about, some kind of idea of perfection.
Yeah. Or some sort of external assignment that we're taking, rather than coming from that place of curiosity and growth and learning. It's much easier to be in that spot and to acknowledge that. And yeah, I've seen it. I've noticed it from time to time. And being a new coach, you kind of you can feel I can feel the pressure of, this person really is wanting help. I really want to, what do I do? And I've had to learn to kind of let that, when I see that, to just kind of let it slide by, because, but I don't do it perfectly, right?
Nobody does.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that to me is what I find most interesting is exactly what you just said. When you open up from a position of curiosity and recognizing that there's a learning curve in everything we're doing, and in the end, an external standard doesn't matter nearly as much when it comes to am I growing? Am I open? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Those things, because then that's not an external expectation we're assigning ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're taking a look at ourselves and growing by that standard, which is really the only one that we have any say in the first place.
Exactly. Like me being a new Grammy. I had to bring it up.
Here we go.
Yeah. So, because you say I bring it up in every show, but so I had to bring it up, right? How I think about my ability to be a grandparent is going to influence quite a bit how open and how much I'm willing to learn and all the things, right? Because that's a new thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, certainly we could go ahead and say like, oh no, well, you were already mom. Well, but that doesn't, it's still different.
That's different.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's with anything that we're learning that's new, of course we want to pay attention to our learning.
Right.
We don't want to expect that we know all the things that are best for the person we're sitting in front of, or, our new job. The thing that kills me too is college graduates. Oh, man. Talk to a few of these guys, right? Guys and gals, graduating college and looking for their first job in their career. And they're having to worry about imposter syndrome, using this term. Holy moly, how stressful would that be?
Oh, yeah, I see it too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. It's, why are you expecting that, what do you think that these other people in work are expecting of you?
Right.
Yes, I have 20 years of experience, college graduate. You better get up to speed on me real quick.
Mm-hmm.
No.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. To the point that nobody's thinking about it, because it's just understood, right? Mm-hmm. It's understood as clearly as in a dark room, turn the light on if you want to see anything. That's how clearly understood it is. And yet that's, oh yeah, see it all the time.
Right. So the pressure and the stress that we're putting on ourselves to be somewhere other than where we are.
And then we call it a syndrome.
And then we call it a syndrome. And then we're reinforcing for ourselves in our head all the self-doubt and all the things that's wrong with the things that are wrong with us, right?
Yeah.
Like, holy moly, what in the heck?
Yeah. But then we've turned it into a syndrome. So you can't really do anything other than, quote unquote, treat it, right? Or work with it or adapt to it. That's the part for me, the messaging on that is problematic. And actually even beyond that, I'm using a very neutral term. To me, it's not helpful at all.
No.
And I think it traps us in this idea that there's some sort of affliction or something we've caught. There's some sort of illness that we just now have to live with. And what I don't like about that is that takes our own capability, our own sense capability out of our even out of our realm of consideration. If it's a syndrome, there's really nothing we can do other than take some sort of external thing, validation, medicine, something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's just not true.
And we do this with all of the difficulties of our life.
Mm-hmm.
We have a thing.
Mm-hmm.
If we're having difficulties, we have a thing.
We have syndrome.
It's not that we're unaware of ourselves.
Right.
It's not that we're feeding our BS stories.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that we're going through a life stage that tends to be difficult.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's that we have a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this came up a few months ago. You might remember when you and I were talking about my novel that I'm pitching, and I just slowed down on the process for a while. And essentially what I came down to was, I think even this term came up. I don't think I used it in regards to myself, but I was frozen in a spot of wanting to make the right move, right? The perfect right move. Yeah. And I'd forgotten that, I'm new to this. I've never tried to publish a book before. So of course it's going to feel new. And of course I'm recognizing there's lots of people out there trying to do the same thing. But I found myself going, wow, there's like 60 people in this online group that I'm in. They're all doing the same thing. There can't possibly be room for all of us. Some of them must be better than, you just, before you know it, those stories were there. Mm-hmm. And you have to, I actually had to be able to see that before I could actually move. Mm-hmm. And then of course, as I've said before, where was the real problem? Well, it was looking me back in the mirror.
Yeah.
That was the problem.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not a syndrome, not other people, not the difficulties of publishing, not the quality of the book. Mm-hmm. It was me.
Mm-hmm. And those darn BS stories.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
But that's the part of that perfection piece.
Yeah.
I think that kind of conditioning around having to be perfect and having to be an expert.
Yeah.
To be heard.
Yeah. To be heard, and then to be, even if it's coming from a place of really
Valued.
wanting to help people. Like I'm so worried they're going to see me as a fraud, and therefore I'm not helping them, or I'm not delivering to them what they need from me. Whether we're talking about it in a job or in a relationship or whatever. Man, there's about 10 different layers of BS stories that get involved in that after a while. So much so that if that becomes reality, you're stuck in a cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then where's the point at which awareness shows up? Right, so that's the other thing. Like, so a lot of these pieces that we've learned about, supposedly, ourselves and others, that keep us like in the dark to ourselves. That person told me I'm this, so I'm this. I have this thing, right? As opposed to being able to go internal and, I don't know, start questioning or start wondering or start getting curious. You used the curious word earlier.
I like wondering too. Yeah.
Just noticing our patterns.
Yep. Yep. That kind of rigorous honesty with ourselves, I think, is, talk about a skill, right? That's practice as well. Noticing when those things pop up. And in order to notice them, have to be open to seeing them, have to be open to cataloging them in a way. Yeah. Because and that to me is perhaps the danger with, calling things a syndrome or whatever in this context, right? If we're talking about something like this. Because then at best, it becomes something to just limit yourself with. At best, and I said at best on purpose. At worst, it becomes a crutch or I can't do anything because of this. And in the end, that robs us of our own agency
Mm-hmm.
and our own capabilities.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, like if you think about it for a minute, like where would that be sitting in your body? Right? Where would that be where would that syndrome actually be sitting in your body? Like as if you have this thing you're carrying around with you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like when we really sort of start to dive into that, what is this thing but words?
Yeah, words. Yeah, yeah.
Just a label,
Mm-hmm.
words.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to mean anything about
Right.
anybody unless we choose it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and I think the applications of that exist elsewhere too. You know, I was telling you the story before we got on the air. A friend of mine is finishing up treatment for an illness, and had this amazing way of handling it. Didn't pretend everything was great because he wasn't feeling great, but he also kept doing the things that he knew was going to be helpful for him. So he acknowledged that he was going through something difficult and out of the ordinary and not at optimum health.
Mm-hmm.
And he was still doing the things to help him best work through that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Health-wise, life-wise in general. And I've been really inspired by that and really noting that he was able to, on one hand, hold the fact that he had this real illness,
Mm-hmm.
and then not turn it into something that it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he never lost his sense of capability and agency, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and really seemed to me to show that honesty with himself at a given moment of, yeah, I can do this, or no, I'm not right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't become because I can't do it right now, I'm never going to be able to do it going forward,
Sure.
or this means I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting worse, or this means I'm getting better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To me,
Absolutely.
that kind of thing was notable
Mm-hmm.
to me.
Yeah, it brings up that idea of transparency, like moment to moment transparency that we've talked about,
Mm-hmm.
not having to go forward with it, not having to go back with it, but in real time, here's where I'm at, and I still have to make lunch,
Yeah.
like we've talked
Yeah.
about
Stuff to make
before.
lunch. Yeah. I can hold all of this,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the for me it was something like the imposter syndrome idea of wondering or opening up to the idea of it's okay to be brand new at this, or it's okay to have a learning curve. The ease that can come with that is going to take care of so many of those challenges just by itself. You don't need necessarily a whole bunch of words put into a book to convince you that imposter syndrome isn't working for you. You know, you can just be open to this idea that you're just learning,
Mm-hmm.
and sit with that and breathe into that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sit with that for a while, not do anything with it. And all of a sudden, fewer words have gone further than a million words ever could by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I know it's amazing coming from me, who I just throw words around like crazy.
Yeah, I'm speechless right now. There are no words. No words.
That makes sense, though.
No, totally, it does. And I think that that idea of like that feeling of like fighting against ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? Instead of just being with ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and being able to, we can't be transparent if we're trying to hide something.
Yeah.
And people feel this. There's an
Mhm.
energy around
Yeah.
not being able to be fully aware in oneself, right? And so we're learning this, and I think that, you know, today more people can relate to this than maybe 15 or 20 years ago. I think that we're sort of learning how important this is.
Yeah.
And yeah, just hoping that people can give themselves more opportunities to sort of create awareness internally, as opposed to having to have the labels to describe them externally.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, the other thing that cuts us off from is the ability then to communicate with others about where we're at. Feeling nervous about being new at something is okay. And in a workplace, how much better would it be to be open to that, recognize that, communicate that to somebody that you're working with, and you might actually get more support than you thought, and recognize that that story that you're expected to be something other than who you are, you might find out that that story is really definitely made up.
Right. And that's the part of having to really kind of sort through our perfectionist
Yeah.
sort of tendencies too, because if we have this drive or we've been conditioned to be perfect, this is going to show up even more frequently for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So many stories around perfectionism and how we appear. so many different flavors.
And
So many
limits.
different limits,
So many limits.
yeah. If perfectionism was ice cream, it would be 32 flavors.
Okay. Where would the hot fudge go? I don't know. That's what I'm interested in.
I don't know where that came from. I don't know.
Who knows?
Who
The
knows?
sun's getting to you.
It could very well be that.
Yeah.
I am excited about baseball. I eat ice cream at baseball games. Maybe
Oh, that's probably it.
that might be.
We circle all the way back around to follow up at the end of the show
With
back to
baseball.
baseball. Yeah.
Yeah,
This is how this
I
is
didn't
gonna
have an
roll.
analogy that helped, but
Yeah,
nevertheless, I'm
okay.
gonna bring it back. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well,
Anyways.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we have it.
So, yeah, I mean, just the opportunity to just be new at something,
Be a
And-
beginner
be a beginner.
at life in every
Yeah.
moment.
Because
How-
there's always
how nice
something
is
new.
that?
I know.
Yeah. It's going to be okay.
Sit with that, everybody. Yeah, because you don't feel like an imposter Grammy, do you?
No, not at all. Not at all. I learn all kinds of things every
Yeah,
day.
You do.
I love it.
Well, I see all the pictures of your grandbabies, and they're not treating you like an imposter Grammy.
No, not at all. Not at all. Even though I don't know anything, they think I know things. Right?
Be good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was great. Well, thanks, Tawny.
Mhm.
And thank you to all of you for listening to that. Hopefully that was some stuff resonated in there. Be sure to connect with us at our Facebook group if you'd like to ask questions in between episodes. And we're here every single week. New episodes every Saturday. Remember, second Saturday of every month, we have our free workshop. So many different things. But we will be back next week with more. So until then, I'm JDK Winnikin.
And I'm Tawny Santabria,
You're not an imposter. Don't worry about it.
unless you are.
How you all feel tonight?
Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.